So it's really heartening to see a lot of you coming back. I get some DMs or like you remember the music. Nice to have the music back. Welcome back. Nice to see all your faces. Two things, like always. This is a session with our experts. We want to make sure everyone turns on their videos. Make sure you update your name with your name at the rate company name. It's really critical for the expert to know which company you are from. And also it makes the expert realize that he's talking to real people as opposed to just, display images. On that being said, I won't take much more time. I want to introduce today's expert. A lot of you who are from cohort 1 will remember Anshul from Fireside as one of the panelists in our last cohort Shark Tank. And whenever I discuss this, Anshul there was evaluating some of our cohort 1 brands who were sort of presenting for feedback. And on this conversation I had with him, one of those really key insights was that how can we take this knowledge a little further? More about today's session, I want to give you a little bit about Anshul's background. For those of you who don't know about Anshul, Anshul is a VP at Fireside Ventures. Fireside is one of the top D2C VCs in the country. More than that, Anshul has personally been involved in the investments in Fireside, specifically for boat, sleep companies, Sarva Yoga, among others. He's also obviously an IMA pass out or a BITS Plani graduate. But more than that, today's session was, one of those things when I discussed with Anshul, I have these thoughts as, okay, what is the biggest challenge that you see from all these startups that come and pitch to you, right? I mean, Anshul is at this vantage point at Fireside that he gets access to a lot of D2C brands coming and telling their story, right? And looking for investment. And why do you say no to them, right? What are those lenses that you really look at in terms of evaluating these businesses? And then, so Anshul was very kind to share some of it with me. And then when I asked him that, do you tell a lot of this directly to the founders who are coming and pitching to you? So he says that, because a lot of the brands are all of our babies, not all of us take this advice very professionally, right? Some of us might take it otherwise. So it's very, very hard for any investor to directly give that advice to someone where it might not make sense, right? So then I sort of discussed with Anshul and he was kind to say, okay, let's do a session where we can sort of teach sort of the lens with which something like a Fireside, because they're evaluating so many businesses, is evaluating D2C businesses, right? And more than fundraising, the idea is your D2C business healthy, right? How do you compare across category, other category startups from your same category, right? And how do you differentiate against your competition? So that's the idea of today's session. We are hoping to sort of uncrack certain of those objectives which you don't hear in a one-to-one conversation, but hopefully when it's taught in a session, you will be objective enough to then apply that same insight to your business and then individually evaluate where you stand for. So makes sense? Thumbs up. Can I get some reaction? I want to make sure we are all pumped up. Great. And on that note, I would like to welcome Anshul to Expert. Anshul, welcome again, and the stage is yours. Now you can share your screen. But yeah.
Thanks, Sharat. I will just share my screen. So just before that, great interacting with all of you. I think, as Sharat said, we sort of discussed that, how can we sort of give maximum value in 2 hours. And think of this session as more, more whiteboard thinking kind of a thing, where we basically try and understand that what makes brands great, right? So we will talk about that, what are the different ways in which you can build out brands. Then we'll also talk about that, what kind of P&Ls, for example, the brand should have, so that you know whether you are doing it in a healthy way or not, right? And third, we sort of talk about that, what are the competitive dynamics which play in each sector, because one of the things which happens is that in any sector in India, you will find number of brands, right? And how do you sort of, from an investor lens, how do you differentiate between one against the other? That's an important thing, right? Also, I like this to be very interactive, so I'll try and use a lot of examples of other brands. But, I would also want some examples from you, because you guys are actually, out there executing within your own categories. So this is very interactive. Please free to jump in at whatever point you want to. So I'll just share my screen. Yeah. So I think the first thing which we wanted to discuss was that how do you actually build a brand, right? There are a number of ways in which you can build, or there can be a number of hooks in which you can build a brand, right? And for example, the first hook is that you have a superior product, right? Now, in some of the companies, especially if you look at electronics companies, this is very apparent, right? For example, Apple has had a much superior product in the phone compared to anyone else. If you take the example of Dyson, right, a much better product compared to anyone else. Even, for example, apparel. When Lululemon came first, they were the best technical fabric. No one could match that fit, that comfort level, etc. So now this is something which is very interesting. We call two kinds of product differentiation. One is what is called a vitamin, and one is what is called a painkiller. So something which is slightly better, right, is more like a vitamin, and consumers will react to it, but they will not react as strongly as, for example, they will react to something which is, very different and much better compared to what is there. In fact, one of our very good examples is Uber, right? So if you look at Uber, the way in which you can basically track that when your taxi is coming is a psychological hook, which makes you feel that, it's a better product compared to something else out there. So, for example, you had the same product, another taxi service, which had an app and you can book it. But if you couldn't see that where your car is on a map, that would have sort of brought down your customer experience quite a bit. So that's a superior product, but it's through a better, UI UX, which is there. The second one is targeting a particular TG. So this is
just to jump in. You might want to share your screen so we'll get a full screen view. Otherwise, right now what is happening is we're just seeing all your other slides. Yeah, just click on slideshow on the top, and then you'll be able to make it a full screen. Perfect.
Yeah. Super. Yeah, the second one is targeting particular, target groups. So, for example, if you look at M Caffeine, right, it's a brand which is targeting people who already have a lot of affinity towards coffee, right? And these are people who like coffee, who believe in its benefits, and then believe that it can also help them in their personal care journey. Similarly, for example, I'm just going to zoom out. There is this brand called Woori. So I don't know, from the people who are in the apparel segment. Yeah. So after Lululemon launched, this is the brand which launched, which is with exactly the same, offering as them, but for men, right? While Lululemon has traditionally been considered as a women's brand, all right? They did extremely well. Recently raised a large round from SoftBank. Another one which basically did the same thing but did in a different geography is a company called Gymshark. Right. Again, similar sort of clothing, but did it in UK. Right? So again, I think one of the general ways in which we see a lot of successful brands do well is by targeting different TGs, right? And this is very interesting in India because India has a lot of different TGs, right? Not just in terms of economic demographics, but also psychographics, in terms of likings, in terms of behavior, etc. So actually, we find, there are a number of sort of gradations. So, for example, in US, if something you could split into 3 parts, in India, probably you can split into 20 parts. And so, and this has been one of the classic ways in which people have done it. Third is standardizing a fragmented supply chain. So I think in this one, the best example would be ID Fresh. So if you remember before ID Fresh, or even right now, you can go to a corner shop and you can buy a dosa batter and idli batter. But this was always sold as a loose product. What they did was they packaged it, and then after that, they basically obviously gave it a sort of legitimacy, right? Because when you buy it loose, you don't know what quality, whether it's fresh or not fresh, etc. So again, we see this theme play out in many, in many different ways. A lot of it is about how do you convert something which is being sold in loose format to a packaged format. But this could also be, for example, ways in which, and this is why sometimes we see that people who are, more for the supply chain background are able to identify certain gaps Right. So, for example, if you look at Boat, the founders used to work in Harman, which is the another company, and they basically identified that you can get the same product which Harman was getting at almost one fifth the cost, right, using similar factories. So this is another one which we see quite popular. The next one is price laddering. This again is very sort of obvious. So, for example, for anything, you will see that there are products all across the price spectrum, right? And how if you can find something which is higher quality but can fit in at a slightly lower price, that works really well. So, for example, if you look at Sugar, the first, one of their first products was a lipstick, which I think was around 600 rupees, while a similar product was at 1200, and then there was a lot of stuff which was, much lower in pricing. Even, for example, Boat, you would find they're placed between all the, the cheap imports, which will be anywhere 200, 250 bucks, to, for example, the premium guys like Harman, etc. Uh, Another one in this, which is very interesting, which is a combination of supply chain and price laddering, is Wakefit. So Wakefit has a very interesting story. The founder of Wakefit was working with Shell, and he used to sell chemicals. So he went to buy a mattress, and he basically realized that the raw material, which is basically the chemical, the foam, is not even worth one fifth the price which has gone into the mattress, right? And he was obviously very shocked that, why do I have to pay such a large amount? And he basically realized that he could cut down the price by almost 50%. So today, for example, you will find that Wakefit is being sold at 7k, 8k, on online platforms. While offline, if you go to buy a product, you might end up spending 18k, 20k, etc. Right? So here there was a very clever identification of supply chain, but along with that, also the whole power of being able to offer something at lower prices. Again, it's not just that it's lower price. You could also sort of have something which is slightly higher priced, but it has to have a clear value proposition with respect to that price, right? Because for while normally it would sell, the cost to switch is a high one, right? For any sort of individual or consumer, and that is why till it does not sort of starkly stand out by itself, it will not. It does not generally give up right to win kind of a thing. Then you have better customer experience. So, for example, this is what used to exist in retail brands. So, if you think about the bed, bath, and body works, they have a beautiful lighting. You will have various aromas milling around. You will have these products which will have exotic names, right? From, let's say, cherry blossom. Then you will have something from Africa, etc. And the whole intention there is to be able to provide customer experience which is much superior compared to anything else. The next one is building a strongly differentiated brand. So in this, for example, what I would put is Mamaearth, right? So when Mamaearth started, they essentially started by saying that we are natural and chemical free, right? And that was a positioning which was not taken by anyone in the market. And everyone, mostly Indians, have a very strong affinity to that. In fact, not just Indians, globally, it's a theme which works very well. And till today, when they do their customer surveys, they find that the maximum the people relate with them is clean, natural and chemical free. And of course, they used various certificates to sort of, strengthen that claim. So they were the first EcoCert brand, which is a certification which says that, don't have these bad chemicals, etc. If we go back a little further, a very good example is Dove, right? Dove was basically built on the gentle as the theme, right? And for example, if you look at any of their ads or you look at their packaging, etc., what they try and push is gentle, right? And obviously, people want, when you use something on your body, you want it to be gentle. So that was again, extremely strong brand positioning. Within that market, the second kind of branding which we see is, for example, very chemical scientific, right? So there is an audience which wants efficacy out of their personal care products. And then there are brands which have come up where the packaging will just mention the active ingredient, so it will say retinol plus 3%, salicylic acid, or there's some ingredients I'm sure you guys know much better than me. But that packaging basically gives a feel which says that it's a very strong scientific brand and there is a very strong differentiation. This thing, if you look at this is most necessary, or at least what we find the segment where this is the most essential is apparel. Right? In apparel, it's very different over a long period of time to build product differentiation, and hence mostly what it ends up standing on is a very strong brand and very strong ops. Right? So obviously you have to be present at all places. Your assortment should be such that people should be able to find what they want, etc. But essentially, whether it's a brand in US, you will see there are a lot of designer brands, right, which sort of get their credibility out of a designer. So you have Michael Kors, you have Kate Spade. Then there are Italian brands, right, which get their credibility out of heritage. So they talk about hundreds of years. So you have all the luxury brands there. You have there are a lot of Milan brands which work on that segment. So we'll come to this. According to us, this is important in almost any brand, irrespective of even if you are building your brand on any of the other pillars. But we'll talk about that. How do you build it, within your own brand? And the final is winning on particular channels. So this, if you look at, in fact, the entire D2C movement, it is basically winning on online channel, right? Because the offline people are not present there, right? And how do you win on Amazon, for example, right? In fact, what we used to see was that prior to this whole COVID, all the large brands were very, very hesitant to advertise online, right? So they would list their product on Amazon, but they would not put their marketing dollars behind, right? Because for them, number one, it was not a profitable channel, and number two, they did not believe in it, right? Very simply. But post COVID, everyone has sort of realized, and a lot of those advertising dollars have started shifting, online. So obviously, also, if another example is that if you would talk to people who were selling on Facebook in 2014-15, the CPM or the ad cost used to be almost 1/3, 1/4 of what they are today, right? And then again, there are people who won on that channel at that point of time, right? So I think winning on particular channels, and this includes both in your retail channels. Today, for example, another actually great example is Plum. Plum was very dominant on Nykaa, right? And as Nykaa grew, Plum also grew. So again, this is someone who has used a particular channel to grow, right? So in this case, you either pick out channels, which could be, retail channels from where you sell. You either identify, channels which are just upcoming and do well on them, or identify existing channels like Amazon, Flipkart, and how you win on them. The second part of it is also, can you identify particular media which is cheaper than it should be, right? Just to give you another example, when Google Ads came up in 2000s, right, I think 2005, 2006, 7, Amazon was the largest advertiser on it for at least the first 5 or 6 years, right? And again, they sort of identified the potential first. Even Expedia, right? They built a lot of their business on that. And this is, interestingly, media is something which constantly keeps evolving, right? So Facebook and Google are dominant now. Then TikTok will come in. Then some other Indian platforms might come in, like Koo, etc. Right? So this is primarily, these are the major ways in which we see brands being built up. Just to give you more examples here. So if you look at Lifelong, right? Lifelong is a brand which sells electronics components online. So what they did was they identified that how can you reduce the price of components without compromising on functionality. So for example, they took a, let's say, a cooking induction top, right? And they identified that, that induction top has brass linings. So if you remove those brass linings, which are for show and not really for any use, you can knock off $200 from the product. Right? And then after that, they used it to, and they were in most categories, they were the cheapest on Amazon, and they did quite well. Right. So this would probably be an example of price laddering. uh, Apple we talked about, right? Apple would be pure product differentiation. Mama Earth, as I talked about, built a very strong brand, right, which is a clean, natural kind of a brand. Sugar, again, I think price laddering, getting good quality products at lower prices. Caffeine has targeted one segment, right? And also, it's very interesting that how how large some of the segments can be, right? So, if you talk to most people, they will say that coffee is a very niche sort of a thing to apply on it, right? But Caffeine is almost a 150 crore plus brand as of today. So identifying these TGs, and this is a very complex stuff where we, for example, find founders come in with great insights, right? In fact, to take another example, it's not from D2C, but I think it's very relevant. There's a company called Animal, which does you can buy and sell animals online, cattle, etc. Now, no one actually, everyone I've asked, no one had actually believed that it could be a large business, right? But today I think they do upwards of 500 crores in GMV, right? So again, because the founder was from that, from that sort of area, and they identified that, there is a gap there, but which was completely non-apparent to people, which are outside that ecosystem. They were sort of able to, mine that. Even, for example, things like in the US, if you'll see that there's a lot of black, beauty brands which have come up, and many of them do extremely well, right? Again, because they've identified a TG, which is not being catered to by the mainstream brands, right? And again, another example is Airbnb, which was sort of rejected by many people. I can guarantee you, if there's no Airbnb today, half the people will say it will not work, right? But again, there was a founder who sort of recognized the gap. So I think here, if there is a particular TG, right, which you feel that is being underserved, and you believe it's a large enough market, most likely you will find resistance with people saying that it is not large enough, right? So this is and that is why, when you are sort of targeting these niche kind of TGs, which are not, let's say, very big, my general advice is build it in a slow, profitable, nice manner, right? Because once you prove that, there's a large enough segment, then obviously everyone sort of swings along. So this is the interesting one, and this is the segment where we see most number of unconventional insights which come up. Bath Body Works we discussed, ID Fresh we discussed, W, again, massively large market, very fragmented, thousands of suppliers, thousands of retailers, right? They were able to sort of build a standardized product out of it. Another interesting thing, which is very apparent, which is very sort of specific to apparel, is that very often there is a design, or let's say a aesthetic to the brand, right, which helps differentiate it from others. But what we have generally found is that brands which are purely sort of differentiating on design, or which say that my design is better, generally do not end up having a long-term competitive advantage, right? Because designs very easily sort of get copied. On the other hand, for example, brands which stand for something which is different, right, and then have a particular design aesthetic, tend to do much better. So, for example, like if you take Global Desi, right, it stands for fusion, and then there is aesthetic on top of it, right? Again, here, sometimes the aesthetic is not very sort of apparent, right? But for example, for certain brands like Lululemon, you would see and you would know, okay, it's a Lululemon kind of a product. So this is a dynamic which is very specific to apparel. And again, but again, if you are sort of building a apparel brand, I would say that while design might help you get quick customers, but think of another sort of value proposition which is more longer term, or more different. Wakefit we talked about. Licious is again a great example of fragmented supply chain, right? Uh, Interestingly, I mean, still it is a very, very fragmented supply chain. Lots of mom and pop butcher shops, very little sort of standardization. You can go and you are not sure what the, how the chicken is being treated, etc. And they have sort of gone about organizing it. Uh, Now, of course, another trade-off which you will have is that sometimes when you try and build the supply chain completely the way which Licious has done it, it can be very capital intensive, right? For example, in cases where you are identifying a supply chain and you believe that you can just bring down the cost by streamlining it, etc., or create a different product by different combining different parts, that is much easier compared to something like Licious. But for example, if you can do it, generally the markets here are very large, right? So, I mean, if you look at Amul also, essentially what it has done is it has, organized a very fragmented supply chain, right? We are seeing new models come up where people are trying to do the same thing with food, right? So people are saying that, we grow our own organic food in, let's say, outside of a city, and then we deliver it to you on a subscription basis, right? So you are basically providing a full stack solution with traceability. We are also seeing this come up in dairy. Country Delight is a good example, right? They started with it, but now a lot of people have started doing it, where they either have their own farm or they sort of certify saying that, these are our SOPs beyond which which everyone has to follow, and that is why we know that this milk is better than what you get out there, and hence and we deliver it directly to you and we charge a premium, sort of a thing. Boat was price point, completely. They were able to sort of find a price point in between two existing price points. Bombay Shaving Company is a particular TG, which is so they basically provided a more premium product to men. Interestingly, if you look at India, you will generally find that there have not been many attempts made to premiumize people, right? So the other examples which I took, Boat, Wakefit, Sugar, Lifelong, everyone has sort of brought the price down, right? Bombay Shaving Company has taken the price up. So now there's an interesting debate. Some people feel that the market is not large enough for India to build out premium brands. But again, it's a question of perspective, right? Okay, maybe 1,000 crore brands cannot be built, but can 150 crore brands be built? I definitely think can be built. So this again is one area which is sort of less explored. Okay, so just out of just to get you guys a little active, I'm going to ask a few of you that what do you feel is the differentiation in your brand, or what is the pillar at which you are building yours, right? So can we talk about Tuna Active?
Yeah, so if Ajit is here, yeah, from Tuna Active.
Tuna Active, yeah. I think it's Ajit.
Yeah, Ajit is, but he's not in this session right now. I think maybe that's why.
Okay. How about Shararat?
Vilash, yeah, you try.
Sure. Hi. So we are into fashion category, particularly sleepwear and lingerie category. So quite that what you were talking about, that the designs can be copied and all that. So even we are also not trying to go put too much on the design aspect. We feel that the way our name is Sharara, so we can do something around the experience of the customer. So even our tagline says that be naughty, be happy. So that's the emotion we are trying to build upon. So the kind of colors we choose in our fabric are more lively, like yellow, those kind of light colors. The prints are also on those like floral and all that, which gives that very easy flowing. Fabrics are lightweight that way, so that people feel comfy and all. So those are certain aspects. And next thing we are trying to do is to build something on the experience end. revamping our packaging, trying to send out some interesting gifts along with the product, you know. So that's how we are trying to let's promote that you stay naughty, which will lead you to give you happiness. So
Mm,
that's how we are trying to build around the experience instead of too much on the design field. Another thing we are trying to do is that for sleeper and lounge wear category, normally people tend to target the Generation Z, the young
mm,
audience. But there is a other larger customer base, people who are plus size, the older aunties who actually use a lot of this sleepwear. You know, they are housewives, so they tend to be in their nightgowns and all that for most of the time. We are trying to give some sort of a fashion sense, some sort of a fashion styling to that customer, which is the tier two, tier three. So our price points, start from like 400 and maximum going up to 1200. So that way we try to reach out to that customer base. So yeah, these are some of the differentiation.
got it, got it. And let's say if you take a channel, I'm assuming you're selling online, right? Amazon.
Absolutely, absolutely. Even as of now, we are primarily selling on marketplaces only, and
Hmm.
Amazon and Meesho are our topmost channels on which we do it. Meesho we started recently, but we are getting better response on Meesho sometimes than Amazon.
Got it. And like in Amazon, in within your category, within if you look at sort of the other brands, what
Right.
kind of things do you see them do to differentiate, or are
Sure.
they very generic?
Right, right, right. So one thing is that is the variety that the customer get a lot of variety, and some of the brands now Amazon itself has got into launching its own private label, so
Hmm.
that's another kind of competition. And another thing that they get a lot of reviews, so somehow they have been able to manage the supply line of it.
Hmm.
Supply line at times is a challenge for us that the inventory is not available, the garment is not available. So some of the brands are able to maintain the supply line, which tends to they tend to get more reviews. So that's another thing. Advertising spend, yes. Some of the brands have larger budgets, so they are in the top of the searches. So that's another thing. Price point is always is a debate that
Hmm.
because in fabric a lot of things can change with the quality of the fabric. So it at times becomes challenging to compete at a particular price point. So and with Amazon private label, I believe they get some concessions. So
Hmm.
pricing is something that they are able to offer at a lower price. And then some of the top brands are better distributed. They utilize the FBA planning better, which we are not able to do sometimes. The closer to the customer, the better the sales. So yeah.
Got it. Okay, thanks, Avinash. I think maybe Veli.
Yeah, Urvi, from Delhi, is she here? Yeah. To be honest, by the way, Anshul, she just
Yeah.
raised capital. Her news from fundraising happened today from Anthill.
Oh,
So I'm just
nice.
celebrating.
Congrats.
Where if she's not here, oh yeah, so she's pretty up, but she's not here. But yeah, she just raised money from Anthill today on Belly. Maybe some of the co-op. Do you want to just call out? Maybe someone wants to raise hands to tell about another example for their product
Yeah,
differentiation, or we can just also call out from the list. Uh,
I think
Anshul, yeah, go on, Anshul. Yeah,
I see Devesh from Where
yeah,
Your
yeah.
Opinion.
Devesh, love to hear.
Hi, so we started in 2013 when there was not much done into the quirky and the apparel space. Uh, but in the next 3.5 years, everybody started coming into the picture, and being a low entry barrier that apparel is sometimes casual apparel is,
Hmm.
it got cluttered. Of course, Bewakoof won with the whole pricing game that they brought down the price laddering very heavily, and so that became on product differentiation. What something that Sold Store did. These are the primary two brands that started similarly. For
Hmm.
us, we kept on. But our goal was a bit different. We wanted to always give all the opinions in the world and to everybody, and slowly we realized it is not possible till we democratize it. So now exactly we have moved and pivoted itself ourselves towards what our core offering is going to be. It's basically customizing fashion for everyone. It's so basically today if you want something customized for yourself, there's a fragmented market out there. The quality brand offering is not that credible, and
Hmm.
if you want something one unit, Printo, Vista Print are not something that are great experience because they are more focused towards a B2B channel. There's nobody in B2C doing that. And that is going to be a differentiation in terms of customer experiences and how we create a whole experience for ability to customize a fashion across 50 to 60 different apparel categories, not just t-shirts primarily, because when somebody thinks about customization, think okay, t-shirt pe kuch print karke mil jayega. That's just that has been done because that is the most easy thing to do, but we are expanding it and now making it a differentiator, and that's where we are right now.
So basically, your value prop would be that you can customize anything.
Yeah, everything end to end, not just the print. You can customize the design, pattern, everything, but not in the Bombay shirt company premium specific, because that becomes too expensive for people to customize. We are in the masstige segment. The price range is masstige, so it is just 20% or 15% higher than what regular price segment is. So it's affordable, small aspirational angle to it, but of course the whole create your own fashion kind of a feeling, so a customer becomes the creator.
Got it. Super. And maybe we can take one food brand about Polka Pop. Gaurav.
Gaurav, why don't you tell us? Yeah.
Sure. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yeah, we can hear you.
Great. So Polka Pop, so we're taking more of a positioning play. So Polka Pop, just a quick introduction. So Polka Pop is India's first homegrown flavored sparkling water. And so the idea behind Polka Pop is to, in some sense, create this unique positioning in the beverage segment by creating sort of a clean beverage, right? So we don't use any sugar, sweeteners, preservatives. Drinks are completely 0 calories. We use natural flavors, and the idea is to create that clean label beverage to support the changing lifestyle of people in India. So the people are becoming more health conscious. They're eating, they're being careful about what they eat, but nothing on the beverage itself really supports these changes. A lot of snacking companies have come out, but beverages have been completely left aside. Diet beverages are also not very good for you in the long run. So what we are doing is we are creating an all-occasion beverage. Because you've used a lot of examples from the US, so taking a lot of inspiration from the flavored sparkling water category in the US, taking inspiration from there and creating an all-occasion beverage that people can have without compromising on their health, essentially. So that's how we're starting, and we'll keep to the core of clean and sort of making healthy living fun and accessible, and then expand on that and grow. So, but we're starting with flavored sparkling water.
Got it. But you would sort of position yourself more on sparkling water, or is it more on, as you talk, zero sugar, zero natural, etc.?
So I think today the market is such that not everybody knows what sparkling water is or what flavored sparkling water is, and therefore they don't know what to expect with a product like Polka Pop. So today we'll start with what people understand, saying this is a fizzy, flavorful drink, but without the sugar, sweeteners, or calories. And then as the market grows and adopts and accepts the product, we kind of take it from there and then essentially turn it into a sparkling water play, as opposed to starting it like that, because then that would make it very difficult for us to talk to our customers.
Noted. Fair point. Okay, and maybe one personal care brand, because I think that needs differentiation the most, considering there's so many now. How about NutriGlow, Aditi?
Yeah, Aditi is Aditi.
Hello.
Hello.
Yeah. Am I audible?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Yeah. Hi, Anshul. So basically, I'm from NutriGlow. I'm a co-founder, and my husband founded the brand 10 years back. So we are into all different sorts of model. We are present on e-commerce portals. We have an offline.
Sorry, go ahead.
Aditi, on mute.
Hello.
Yes.
Yeah, actually, I am just talking through the phone since there's a little network connectivity problem. So that's why. Yeah. So basically, our brand model is differentiated into 3-4 models. We have an offline model, We also have some exports, and we are present on all the e-commerce marketplaces. And currently now we are also trying to, focus on our own website. Now the differentiation is that, since, again, it's a personal care brand and there is a variety of, TG segment that we need to cater to. So mostly our brand is like catering to the mass segment, since, as like you were saying, that it's very difficult to, make a very luxury brand and promote that in India. So our forte was, when we started, forte was basically to provide beauty as a necessity and not as a luxury. So all the people like who cannot afford good and luxurious products, we wanted to provide them the beauty products. So we have our own manufacturing unit set up in Greater Noida, and currently, we are having a revenue of 40 cr on like yearly revenue. So I feel that we are catering to a very large group of TG clients. Our USP is that we have full manufacturing, R&D, designing in our hands. So like we people are very dynamic. Whatever we feel, whatever feedback we get from our products, and currently we haven't done much in the marketing. So it's a homegrown brand. Basically, our presence is there on all the marketplaces, the major marketplaces like Amazon, Flipkart, Nykaa, Meesho. So through all these marketplaces, 70% of the sales is there, which we are deriving. And whatever feedback we are receiving from the people, according to that, like we take care of the feedback, we do our own R&D, and then we, after, different formulations, we devise the product. But the confusion which right now, just to join this cohort and to get more, learning opportunity, what we feel is that since there is a particular set of audience that have accepted NutriGlow, now we are devising the sub brands of NutriGlow to make customer accept the more of a premium feel. Right? And is it possible to, grow the brand through one or two marketplaces? As you said, that you can be a differentiator in one platform, or like there is another concept that you have to be present everywhere, to beat the funnel. So these are certain level of confusions that they're like to take decisions strategically. These are the things. Otherwise, the USPs are the best quality and the economic price. So that is the USP. And distribution wise, we are there in Pan India, so that's not a problem.
So good point. So just to clarify, when I said that win on one channel, in the end, the future is omni-channel, right? You have to be everywhere. But I was talking more from a startup brand, that how do you sort of build your equity initially, right? But I think, for all our brands, they are in almost every channel. Obviously, there is a little bit of sort of judgment involved in when you go to each channel, right? So, for example, our brands generally start online, hit a certain scale, then after that they move offline, right? So that's a slight difference, but yeah, congrats on building a great brand.
So like, what should be the journey from taking it to, a more higher level? You feel that offline should also complement to the online structure. And as you said that, no, everywhere presence should be there. Or some brands do think that, no, data insights are very important, to grow and make it a unicorn. So some of the brands do think that selling it through your own website is more important than marketplaces. So what should be the, there are different thought process actually.
Oh, perfect. So actually, Aditi, that was the next slide. So maybe I'll just cover it in that one. Okay.
So by the way, there's a quick question in chat if you want to take it from a luxury brand perspective, I think.
Yeah.
From Mamta, yeah. If you want to just see if it's relevant, we can just
Yeah, absolutely. So this is under that brand proposition, right? So in brand proposition, I think one of the visual cues can be a big brand differentiator, right? And again, this works really well with fashion, right? So in fact, a lot of brands, also sort of orient to them towards, more sexual content, etc., right? Which you will see Calvin Klein, etc. And that is nothing but, building a visual cue so that the customer basically starts associating your brand with something, right? So for sure, the content communication can make a very big difference. In fact, in brands, it is one of the biggest differentiators possible, right? On the whole thing about working with real women, this has worked well for brands. In fact, for one of our brands also called Fable Street, when they sort of put creatives out there featuring real women talking about them, that is what finds the maximum engagement. So that for sure is a good value prop.
Perfect.
Thanks.
And okay, so I'll sort of share again. Yeah. So now coming to what we, how we sort of see a brand grow, right? And what do we look for at each point in terms of while funding? So when the first, the brand is, let's say, on a paper and it is just an idea, the three things which we sort of look forward to is the category architecture, potential disruption, and team experiences. So category, for example, means that, for example, if let's say you are starting something in nutraceuticals, it's a completely sort of, might be a new area, right? But on the other hand, if you are sort of starting something in personal care, then there's already lots of brands. So how do we see those brands, right? Maybe, the way we see the market is that we see there are three broad buckets, whereas legacy, natural, scientific, right? And maybe then within scientific, we see two more subsegments. So, and then obviously I talked about, all these various ways. So do we see that could the category be disrupted through any of those ways, right? Could you take a positioning which is very different from what other people have? Could you do a product, or could you build a product which is targeted towards a TG, etc.? Right? And the third, obviously, we look for is team experiences. So, if again, as I talked about that, sometimes, founders have great insights into certain TGs, which other people just, can't visualize. And something like that is obviously a very sort of powerful, thing for us to say that this will do well. The second one is product market fit. Now, essentially, we want our companies to start online, right? And that is because of two reasons. Number one, in online, it is much easier to iterate, right? So, for example, let's say we launch a formulation, it's not working, then we can very quickly sort of launch two more, right? And I can very quickly see that, within 5, these are 2 my hero products which will work. So at this stage, there are just 5 things which we sort of look at to see whether this brand is doing well or not. It's reviews, returns, retention, ratings, and referrals, right? What here is written as the 5 R's. Great brands, we find 30 to 40% repeat rates, founders sort of, customers sort of reaching out saying that, it is, great, where can I get it? Why don't you do these 2, 3 more things, etc. All right. And in this, while most of our brands start both D2C and marketplace, there's a thought process which says that, why don't you just start marketplace? Because D2C can be more cash burning. Our view is that D2C is also very important because it allows you to, refine that whole process of, for example, getting that product market fit, right? So you are directly talking to your customers. You can ask them questions. You can lay out, your site in a way that which products are working, which are not working, right? So our companies, we generally prefer that, when you are at this stage, you are both D2C and marketplaces, and we monitor these 5 metrics. We have seen some founders only do D2C, right? And some founders only do marketplace. Both of that works. So, I mean, on the comfort, depending however you are comfortable. The third is winning at the point of sale. So this actually, in my view, if you take one thing from this slide, take this point, right? That you have to win at the point of sale, right? When you start as a brand, you have, zero right to win as a brand because people don't know you as a brand, right? So essentially, when the person is there buying on Amazon, right, and that person is looking for X, how do you convince him that that person in that split second that I am better, the better product there? And that is why when you sort of build out your brand, always build it out channel by channel, right? You should say, how will I win on A channel? How will I win on B channel? How will I win on C channel? right? But once, while you are doing it, this should be overlaid under a strong brand, right? If that strong brand is not there, what will end up happening is that you will end up becoming a label which is selling, right? And there are a lot of labels which sell quite well. Right? I can tell you, there's a guy who sits out of Raul Kela. He sells 100 crores of knives online, right? There's another guy who sits in Jaipur. He sells upwards of 50 crores of mosquito nets online, right? So there are a bunch of these guys, and they do very well because they have figured out how to win at the point of sale. But they will neither be investable businesses nor will they be brands, right? Because somebody else tomorrow can come and win that business. In fact, that is the kind of businesses which many of these aggregators like 10 Club, etc., sort of target. So what we look for at this stage is that how do you win at each point of sale, right? And there are different drivers for different point of sale. So for example, Amazon, how do you drive traffic to your page, right? And once you drive traffic to your page, how do you convert it best? Offline, for example, if you are in a shop, where are you placed in the shop, right? What is the visual merchandising? How do you stand out on the shelf? But I'm assuming this is what the whole program of expert is around, right? Which is marketing. But essentially, at this point, you try and figure out where do you win at point of sale and start overlaying a strong brand on top of it, right? Which is what does the brand stand for? Also, we feel that this is the point at which you should start, your core team build out should be completed, right? And what, this essentially, is again a big difference between what we have seen between successful founders and, not so successful ones. The successful guys have invested in their teams ahead of time, right? So, for example, Mamaearth was hiring people, at salary costs of 35, 40 lakhs annual salary at a very early stage, right? While most startups would not do it when they're at least 5x that scale, right? So essentially, there are two benefits to this. I think the first benefit is that your bandwidth will release, right, to do other things, so that you can focus on some of the, larger things. The second thing also is that you will get expertise within that segment, right? So, I mean, a lot of time, when you're starting out, cash is tight, etc. And obviously cash is tight, so then you can't hire. But, as soon as you have the luxury to hire, do start hiring to build out your team. Right? Then the next is the brand market fit. Now here is where the brand starts becoming, very strong, right? So at this point, for example, if you take Wakefit, right? By the time Wakefit would have been doing 40, 50 crores, and none of us would have heard it. Now most people would have heard of Wakefit. Right. So this is the point at which, your brand starts becoming more powerful or, than just the channel on which you are winning. So at this point, obviously, you have to sort of figure out that what sort of media buying will you do, right? You also have to figure out communication, which can be done at a scaled level, right? So when you are early, you can sort of put ads on Facebook, etc., which are very targeted to micro TGs. But at this point, you would have exhausted all of that. So then you have to talk to broader audiences. You have to figure out, what kind of things you can talk to them, etc. Right? And then, so I think this is also the time when you start going into other channels. So, for example, our companies had started doing offline, or generally have started doing offline at this point. Now, when to go offline is a very interesting question, right? So I think what we have seen is that when brands feel that they have sort of exhausted the online potential, right, then after that they go offline. Or number two, when they have enough money, then they can build out the team to handle both the channels simultaneously, right? So I mean, just if I were to take our brand's example, so Boat went offline very late in its journey, purely because Amazon and Flipkart, almost they were able to do upwards of 2,000, 2,500 crores just on those two channels, right? So if that kind of scale is there, then obviously you don't need to go to that level. Mamaearth, on the other hand, went offline when they were doing, I think, 500, 600. And then after that, today, maybe if, let's say if they do 1,000, out of that 300 comes out of those offline channels, right? So these are two examples of brands which have gone very late in their journey offline. And there was a lot of sort of, when they were starting, there was sort of a question on how deep online is, right? What we have found is that it is considerably deep. Not like, earlier people used to think only 50, 100 crores you will tap out, but it is a deep enough category if everything else works out, right? The second thing which you should consider is that in offline, you also have to, there are two ways to win in offline, right? One is called BTL, which is you have to win within that shop. So if I put my product within the shop, it has to be in the best place. The packaging has to be great. If you are a food product, you need to have a promoter there, which is sampling, etc. The second way to win is with the ATL, which is, supported by TV advertising, etc., which is what, let's say, Mama does. Right now, BTL is obviously a low cost way of doing it and more efficient. ATL is a more non-efficient, or not non-efficient, but non-trackable way of doing it. So again, when you are going offline, you should have, and if you're going at this stage, you basically have to have a clear strategy. What will you do, etc. Right? But even if you are, not going offline, you should at least start doing small experiments, right? Maybe put yourself in 50 shops, see that, what kind of things resonate, what kind of team structures do you need, etc. And then after that, obviously, you have the, this is the, larger, this is for the larger brands. So when you sort of hit, let's say, upwards of 60 million, then questions start coming up that do you want to be one brand or do you want to be a house of brands? What kind of category extensions will you go to? So, boat till now was only audio wear, but now they're thinking about TV, etc. Right. Then after that, obviously, consumer lifestyle skill management. So at this point, you will have huge amounts of data, right? How do you sort of monetize it? So like the example I like best is, Shoppers Stop has this First Citizen card, which they do quite well with. They have personal shopping and all that. So again, can you build differentiated sort of offerings for your most loyal consumers? Can you push up AOV, etc.? And again, that is something which you should start focusing right from the start. A lot of people focus purely on acquisition, but they don't focus on retention, right? And, technically retention is much, much cheaper than acquisition. So this is how we see the path. Obviously, I'm sure there are more paths to do it. But we have found that, this is sort of like a one which is more templatized and which can work. So any questions on this before we move on to the P&Ls?
Yeah, Shilpa has a question. Shilpa.
Hi, Anshul. Thank you very much. This is very helpful. I basically have two questions. One is that typically at what stage in an organization's life cycle do you see brands hitting each of these stages? I mean, is it a 2-year, 5-year, 10-year? What is it? The second question which I have is, when I was going through each of the points, is it really this watertight? I mean, some brands may choose to do some things a little ahead of time and push out some things to later. So how watertight is this really?
No, absolutely, Shilpa. So this is, this is just a sort of like a, how should I say, it's a best practice, right? There are like, I'm sure there are multiple ways of building it out, right? So do just take them as guideposts. You can do anything before also and later also, right? I mean, many brands do category expansion right at the start, right? And things like that. Sorry, what was the first question?
So I said typically at what age is the organization when it hits each of these milestones? I mean, typically product market fit is what, 2 years, 3 years, 1 year? Like what is the guardrail that you would look at as an investor?
So very tough, to sort of lay out. Okay, let me use some examples. So let's take the fastest guys, right? So the fastest companies which we have seen, I would say 12 months to like a 1 crore per month kind of a number. Then after that, maybe another 18 months to a 4 crore, 3 to 4 crore per month kind of a number.
Okay.
And typically, I would say by the fourth year, they would hit 100, 120 crores annualized. And then after that, we have, I mean, so I think it's not relevant because of COVID or maybe that, but like we have in the last 2 years, I mean, some of the brands we have seen insane scale up. So 100 to like 100 to 100 to 1,000 happening within 3 years. Like we have seen 3 brands do it, right? So, so these are the fastest growing brands. Now the second kind of brand. So on the other side, we see a lot of brands which have very quickly reached 1 crore per month number, right? So I mean, there's some brands just sort of hit that very strong sort of pocket of demand or very strong sort of solution, and very quickly sort of scale up initially, and obviously at that point they're completely bootstrapped, right? So that we have seen very often, but equally often, but that is not like the norm, right? It's not generally, it won't happen. Now the second portion, which is let's say reaching up from one, so let's say reaching 1 crore a month, let's say for a normal brand might end up taking 2 years, 2.5 years, right? At that point, from there to the next 4 crores, generally we see it to be a very quick journey, because a lot of time, if all the other things are okay, which is review, returns, retentions, etc., then it's just a matter of sort of boosting your marketing spend. Now again, that's another variable which is there to take. So I mean, in the first one, from 0 to 1, we see a lot of companies which have quickly reached, but purely on the basis of marketing, right? So very high burns, marketings are like 1:1 or 0.75:1, etc. So that we don't sort of, I mean, we obviously then put a little bit of discount to that, right? But that is another way people grow. Now the second portion, which is 1 to 4, generally we have seen if the first few work, it doesn't take a lot of time, right? After 50, it again is a little tough, because then after that, on each channel you have to find, how do you win, etc. And then again, then there is no sort of time limit. I mean, many brands which are like, we have 3-4 brands which have been between that 50 to 100 for the last 2.5 years, kind of a thing, right?
Okay. That helps. Thank you.
Yeah, so just a time check before any questions. We are 1 hour over. Huh? We have another hour, and I think you have also the metrics to cover and other things. So yeah, so you can take the call. Yeah, if you want to take more questions or you want to move on. Yeah, we can take the questions later also. Yeah.
Sure. I think then let's move on to the P&Ls. So this is, we'll just run through the P&Ls of how, the way we see the brands. Sorry, just 1 minute with me. Yeah, I think the full screen thing is gone.
We can see your screen properly. There's no problem.
Oh, you can see. Okay.
Yeah, perfectly.
So I think, so we'll just, again, these are signposts. What I've tried to model is, what a good sort of PNL looks like. And you can sort of compare your PNL to see that, where are areas where you need improvement or where it can, be done better. Again, this is just a signpost, actuals vary quite a bit. So on the apparel, so this one we'll take on gross revenue, because this is as a category, the returns are quite high here. All right. So what we find is that marketplaces, the returns can end up being almost like 30-35%. Right. On the website, the returns, I mean, should not be more than 10%. COGS, so I think the biggest sort of driver for your PNL, irrespective of whatever category you are in, will be your gross margin, right? The higher the gross margin, the more comfort you'll have in sort of marketing, doing other things. But some gross margin will also be dictated by your positioning, right? So if like boat or like sugar, there's a price point which you are targeting, then obviously you have to work backwards out of it. So apparel, we find good gross margins to be around 65%. Now this varies quite a bit, but I would say if it is less than 50%, then think about that. How can you increase it? Right? Below that is a little worrisome. Above that, generally 65 is good. Then out of that, logistics costs, I think on the marketplace, commission plus logistics, generally we see around 25%. Again, varies quite a bit. New brand, Myntra might ask more, old brand might ask lesser. So essentially, the CM1, which we see as a good CM1 in this, on marketplaces is around 35%, and on website is 60%. All right. Then the next big spend is marketing. So marketing on the marketplaces, we have seen a cost, right from 10x to 20x, right, for good companies. So performance marketing here, I've taken 5%. So it could be anywhere, let's say 8%, 10%. On the D2C side, a good spend according to us is around 30%, which is 1/3 of your revenue as CAC. And it is dependent on, again, two things. Broadly, one is your ROAS, how much do you get as a return on ad spend, and the second is repeats, right? So for us, a good business structure would be that at least 30% of your revenue is coming from repeats. On the new acquisition side, your ROAS is above, let's say 2.5. Now, again, here we see various ranges. I mean, there are companies, ROAS is best when you are just starting out, right? So we have seen companies, which are doing 2.5 crores a month at a ROAS of 6x, 7x, etc. But those are exceptions, right? But they are not like very rare exceptions. So do aim for high numbers. But if it is low, it is fine. The way to work around it is see that how can you diversify your channels, right? Can you get more traffic from partnerships? Can you get from working with affiliates? If you can limit your Facebook and Google sort of dependence to 30% on your new acquisition, you will generally do fine, right? So the CM2s can be anywhere from, let's say here, it's a healthy CM2 is 25%. But if your CM2 is, going down to 15%, that is also fine, right? The final is overheads. Now, this obviously, you will start with certain overheads which will be high relation to revenue. And as your business increases, your overheads as a percentage of revenue will keep coming down, right? So in the start, this will be very high. But if, these are relevant people, those costs are needed, then they are needed. But on a steady scale, once they come down, I think you should look for a EBITDA of 10% kind of a thing. So the back way to work it is if your CM2 is 15%, right, then your EBIT overhead should be 5% so that you can reach a EBITDA of almost 10%. And your overhead today might not be 5%, but you should just calculate that at what revenue will it be 5%, right, where I'll need to add people, etc. So I think broadly, three takeaways: gross margin. Try and make sure it is, 50, at least upwards of 50%. 65 would be great. Second is marketing. On D2C, good marketing spends are 1/3 of your revenue. On the marketplace, try for anywhere from 10x to 20x. Your CM2 should be anywhere between 15 to 25%. And your end EBITDAs, long-term basis, try and aim for 10%. The second one is on personal care. So personal care we'll take on revenue because on the net revenue, because here the returns are very marginal, right? The personal care, we see gross margins anywhere from 75 to 85%, right? And we regularly see a 80% sort of a gross margin. So that's why this is a great category to be in. Marketplace commissions, again, 28 to 30%, might be higher or lower depending on the way it is. The CM1s can go up to 40, so the CM1s end up being somewhere around 43% to 60%, marketplace and D2C. The Performance marketing, again, I think on the D2C part, it stays the same. 1/3 of revenue is what is ideal. On the marketplace, I have taken here, 5x, because the competitiveness in the category has increased quite a bit, right? In the start, we used to see 10, 15x here also. And also, I think, at scale for sure, it drops down to 4 to 5x. It's almost, as a thumb of rule, make not more than 20% of your revenue should be going in marketing on marketplaces. This gives a CM2 of around 22-23%. And again, overheads depending on what stage your company is in, etc. You should be there. I think one important thing is that where do you sort of account for brand marketing, right? So brand marketing is something which you should do, at all points of time, which is building out the brand. And generally it is taken below CM2, right? Now, when you are starting out, your brand marketing has to be very sort of, how do you call it? It has to be very sort of grassroots, hacks, maybe some, writing blogs on some other people's, who have other websites which have large audiences. Maybe you do a little bit of spend on brand, etc. Right? But as your, business sort of scales up, or as you sort of get more years into the brand, this should form a large chunk of your marketing. And ideally, it should come out of your performance marketing, right? So your performance marketing should decrease, and that should start getting down below your CM2 as a brand marketing line, right? So I think that is one important thing to remember. The second important thing to remember is that in this case, I think there are no home care brands here, but the volume of the product makes a big difference, because for example, if you were into home care, with almost 95% of the product is water, and then you are sort of transporting large volumes, and the logistics costs turn out to be very high. So in that case, going through a cloud tail, I have not done the maths here, but generally, what our companies have sort of done that maths, and they find that going through the cloud tail ends up being more cost effective, and results in better margins if you are selling a bulky sort of a product. Then a third thing, which again, if you look at sort of all categories online, the personal care is the one which has scaled the maximum, right? You will see the most number of scaled brands in personal care. The one variable which obviously works in its favor is gross margin. The second variable which works in favor of this, but against sort of F&B category, is the AOV, which is your sort of average order values. So if your AOV is too low, what ends up happening is that your logistics cost ends up being very high as a percentage of your revenue, right? So if you're selling, let's say, a 200 rupee product, the logistics cost will be high, and that sort of upsets the maths. So generally, we have found that AOVs in personal care could be anywhere from 600 to 1,000, which is a sort of a comfortable AOV. In case you have a personal care product which is sort of lower, just think about that dynamics also. And the third is food and beverage. This category, is a little bit of, tough category online. So we have generally found that, companies, so again, tying back into the last slide, at what point do you go offline, etc., needs to be factored in. I think the first one is gross margin. So we generally find gross margins to be 50%, which is good gross margins. Generally, because foods, it's more like a everyday purchase, and people are sensitive about price, so it's not a very high gross margin category. Marketplace commissions, again, I think we see anywhere from 15 to 30%. But what is interesting is that what we are finding is that a lot of our brands are actually scaling up on the Fresh and Instamart channels. So instead of the normal marketplace, right, Instamart is starting to become a large sort of takeoff point. And it is also, I mean, if you think about, a lot of categories are impulse purchases, right? So I mean, even if you take Pepsi, right? No one goes out of the house thinking today I'll drink a Pepsi. You feel thirsty, you find it somewhere and you sort of buy it. So that whole impulse thing, is now sort of coming online with the 10-minute deliveries and the Instamarts of the world, etc. So in case you are a F&B brand, do explore this channel. It's doing quite well. Performance marketing, I think, again remains the same. I think on a website, aim for a 1/3 as cost. On the on the marketplaces, anywhere from 5x to 20x, depending on what it is. Here, the CM2s you will probably end up with anywhere from 7 to 10%, and then after that you can look at the overhead cost. Great. So any questions on this?
Yeah, there are 1-2 questions on chat, Anshul, I think maybe. Simple question.
Okay, so maybe steps for brand proposition we can take later. Why repeats on marketplaces? So it's not trackable, right? So for most, so I think probably Amazon Pie people who have are able to track, but the other people are not able to track. So that's why I have not taken it. But again, it's a sort of a very strong metric. So I mean, if you have sort of access to the category manager, you should constantly keep pestering them to tell us that what are the repeats which you are having there. So this one not really, Amar. So I mean, if you look at it, we are talking about a 10 to 11% EBITDA, right? In apparel. In personal care, you could end up ideally being 15 to 20%, right? It's only food which is slightly lower, which is 2 to 3%. And in this case, obviously, then offline becomes an important component. So in the end, everyone would want to see at least a 10% EBITDA, and then obviously you need to be offline, to be able to make up in those channels. Yes, the only cost between these two is generally performance marketing.
Perfect, Anshul. Yeah.
Can I ask a question?
Yeah, sure.
Anshul, so how important is being asset-like while evaluating issue? Like you emphasized on the bottom line, which is definitely important. But let's say for our fashion industry, a lot of investment going in building the inventory. But if we work out a model which makes us asset-like, is that becomes a differentiation, though it may affect bottom line somewhere. But how do you evaluate that as a investment?
Yeah, so in fashion, we actually look at inventory turns very closely because it's a metric of how healthy your business is, right? So that dead inventory is a very sort of common this thing. So obviously, any company which is more inventory efficient will be looked at much more favorably, right? In terms of capex, I think if sort of you want to vertically integrate backwards, we only sort of from an investor's lens, or at least from our lens, it is beneficial only if you have a strong edge, right? If you are doing something which others cannot do, right? So, for example, like if you take apparel as a category, if you are doing athleisure, today most of it is imported from China, right? So, if you were to putting up capacity to build that athleisure, and you say that my product will be better and cheaper, then it is favorable. But for example, if let's say you are building a normal kurta, right? Then in that case, we would not sort of look at it favorably. So because like 95% of the brands don't have something which is an edge on the manufacturing side. That is why we have seen very few sort of capex or at least needing capex sort of investments. Inventory is a sort of like it's an absolute essential metric which we track, that how dead it is.
Thank you, sir.
I think two more hands.
Yeah, we have many questions, Anshul. My question is, do you want to take the next slide and then we come back to questions? It will be easier.
Okay, sure.
Yeah.
Sure. I think we can, next slide, we can quickly sort of.
Let's just put those questions in chat and then we can review that. Yeah, so we don't lose them. Yeah.
So I think the final one is, on competitor dynamics. So, in any category, you will find, there are multiple people who are trying to do it. And if you find success, what you will find is that some of the normal guys who are not in that segment will also start doing it, right? So how can you sort of win? And again, as I said, your first task is to win at the point of sale. So how can you win against that, right? So assume that you are selling on Amazon, right? And now let's say you are selling a product like a Uziva kind of a product, which is a healthy sort of powder mix for healthy powder mix, right? Which helps you get all the nutrients daily. Now let's say there are 10 guys, who are sort of selling the same product, and so how do you win? I think what we have seen is form factor. So, for example, one of our companies called Wellbeing came up with the form factor called melts. So you basically put that product on your tongue and then it melts, right? It's a new way of taking a nutraceutical. So then that becomes a differentiation. Second is better claims, right? So somebody else is claiming that, in personal care that 90% of the people said that my skin felt better, right? Can you say 90% of the people felt that my skin felt better and more hydrated, right? Or for example, felt better and lighter in color, right? So how can you sort of build claims which are superior to what some of these guys are selling? The third is obviously bundling, upselling. Maybe people are selling 3 products. Can you combine 3 products and sell them together, right? Your, let's say, night regimen, right? So in personal care, it's popular. Instead of single products, can you sell a whole regimen? Final is micro segmenting the TG, right? So can you sort of sell it for each like particular TG, right? So if you are, selling a product, for example, let's say you are selling a suntan, can you sell it for a specific person who has spent the whole day out, let's say playing golf, right? Or somebody who is just back from the beach, or someone who is I don't know, maybe someone who is south of the tropics, right? So essentially basically appeal to someone who is more sort of niche. For example, if I am searching for a solution, right, and I find a solution which is generic, I'll not relate so much to it, but I find a solution which is exactly for someone like me who, let's say, who works with D2C brands, does this thing from 9 to 5 p.m. Right? So I will relate more. I'll say, oh wow, this is just me. So I think that's the second way. Then there's brand. So for example, I think the most normal sort of most popular ways through visuals, right? So if you look at one of our brands called Kapiva, which is sells Ayurvedic foods, they realize that a lot of people are clicking on thumbnails, and the thumbnails need to be really attractive. So they completely revamped their packaging to make it a mixture of illustration, and things which sort of evoke goodness. So like fresh, if you will see fresh apples or things like that, right? So that is one way. The second way is also that, what you will find is that over time, all categories tend to develop certain codes, right? So if you were sort of to take, let's say, kurta, you will find most ads will depict in it in a similar way, right? There will be a celebrity, they'll be wearing it, right? Maybe they are at a wedding and something is happening, right? Can you do something which is shocking, right? Right? And again, in the West, like the example which I was using, a lot of people started using more sexual imagery, which helped, but then that also became commoditized. Everyone started doing it. Right. So can you think more deeply that how can you break the visual codes of your category? Then customer experience, right? So what some treadmill guys started doing who sell on Amazon, they said that after you buy a treadmill, we will call you and we will give you a free diet plan. Right? So it's essentially going one step forward and saying, what can we do for you? Right. Channel, again, as I said, you have to win on each channel. So, for example, can you find, let's say, one competitor is good on one channel, can you be better on the other channel, right? So, and obviously, in that channel, you have to find a way to win. Actually, this is a little repetitive in the sense that, when you have to, so obviously, you have to identify channels where you can win, but the channels on which you are finding more competitive intensity, there you can try product and brand combination kind of a thing, right? And for each channel, you have to identify the user flow and see how you have to win. So, for example, if I take Amazon, there are two parts to the process, right? One is I get someone on my page, and second is I convert them, right? When I get them someone on the page, the metrics which I have to track are that what is my share of voice. So, for example, of all the ads, how many times do I appear there? Second, what is my share of the searches? So, for example, if somebody searches shampoo, am I coming in the top 5 or not? Right. So these two you have to iterate and get better so that you drive more traffic on your page. Now, the second thing then you have to do is that how much are you converting on your page? So that is a sort of feature of your A plus content, etc. So again, each channel has its own nuances, right? In an offline store, you will track your walk-ins and conversions, etc. And then you have to see that at each place, how can you do better than the competition, right? And the final, obviously, is that can you combine each of these, right? Can you have a unique value proposition with a very clutter-breaking brand, making use of a channel which no one has, which no one is on. So obviously that is, that is the dream. So for example, the example I was giving you of Yuri, which is the US brand which started like a Lululemon offering for men, right? So they started with an offering for men, which was like completely different from what everyone was doing in the market. The brand was, very sort of chic, coastal California, which was not very different, but it was something which was existing not in the normal activewear category. It was more the casual wear category kind of a thing. And channel, actually, they started online, but they started the wholesale also. So they were being sold in all these, Nordstroms and the large sort of department stores. Now, that's a very unconventional choice to make right at the start, but made sense for them because there was no other competition there. Next is the best team to execute. So again, this is something which people sort of don't consider it, but it's a very big sort of competitive advantage. One great hire can sort of change the trajectory of the brand. So think about how you can win against competitors. Third is, which is again very important, enough runway to do experiments and learn. See, the whole beauty of, or the the whole beauty of the D2C and online space is that you can quickly learn. You can launch various products very quickly. You can see what works, what doesn't work, etc. Right? And you need to. So your mindset should always be quickly experiment, see what is working out, and then scale it up. Right? If you go in a mindset saying that I will scale before I have learned and know what is working, that generally does not end well. And the other extreme where we are not experimenting, you have found one product and you say that, now life is set. I will continue and do that. That also does not work. So it has to be you have to have a culture within your org, which basically says that can we continuously run experiments, right? And it has to be at each stage, right? See, your marketing guy has to be constantly thinking that what are the various marketing experiments I can run. Your product development guy has to be always thinking that how can I talk with the category manager? How can I look at search trends? What all can I do to basically keep coming up with new products, right? So again, see that how can you do experiments to uncover things which can be better than the competition. Yeah. So that's it. I think we can take questions now.
Anshul, do you want to do a breakout and then we take questions, or what? Or do you think we don't have time for the breakout? Maybe.
Either ways, I mean, if there are a lot of questions, then let's do questions. If
Okay, perfect. Yeah, so then I think that's a question in chat if you want to pick up. Yeah.
okay.
And if anyone has any other questions, just raise hand. And then if we have some time, we have some idea to make you pitch your business to differentiate with the competition to your peers. We'll put you in the breakout room and then get honest feedback. So, but we'll get there if we have time. So yeah.
So is there any metric you look at to evaluate whether the burn is justified or not? See, this is a very hard question. If the company is CM2 positive, right, and the 5 R's are great, which is reviews, retentions, ratings, there is a clear value proposition. That is the ideal state to be in, right? The burn on the team, we don't look at so much because, essentially you are investing ahead of time. So that is not such an issue. But like we have also found stray cases where actually burning on CM2 was also not that bad. So if, for example, you are building a completely new category, right, where you are talking about consumer adoption, etc., and then you have to basically spend to make a consumer try. But after that, once the consumer hooks on, then after that they stay for long. Then it is actually justified to burn a little bit of money. But the flip side too is be very careful. It is the easiest thing to say, right? It is very easy to say that, oh, my customer will stay for 2 years, my LTV will recover the CAC, etc. Right? Mostly it does not happen, right? But in case if it is a new product, right? I mean, if you take food delivery, right? Now food delivery, you have to burn a lot of money to make people sort of realize that, this is an option. But once you have, you can have people who are ordering 3 times, 4 times in a month or in a week, right? Now, again, no sort of statement on Zomato's burn, etc. But that is just an example to illustrate that there are certain products, right, which will allow you to burn. But mostly, there is no reason for you to burn on CM2 in a consumer brand generally. Is 2.5x ROAS standard for your companies? Are these companies for an established company or an early stage? So as I said, we have seen early ROASes anywhere from 5x to 2x. So this is not standard, but at scale, 2.5 is very good, right? At scale, what I mean is upwards of 100 crores type of a number. It's a very good ROAS for some of our companies which are, much larger, so doing almost, let's say, 300, 350 crores on the D2C channel. ROASes are anywhere from 1.3 to 1.4x kind of a number. Yeah. But for them, the repeats are very high, which is 30-35%. Do you think celebrity endorsements make a difference? For sure, they make a very big difference. In fact, the next stage for our companies, we make sure that, they do that celebrity engagement. So I think there are 2 parts to it. One is that the whole influencer bit has to be a very important portion of your marketing mix, right? Now that influencer has to have both macro and micro, right? We have found, and again, it depends. I've often heard also contrary, where the celebrity did not help, but many of our brands, the celebrity has really helped. A prime example is Mamaearth, where Shilpa Shetty used to do a lot for them at the start, and they did very well. In fact, Boat also relied very heavily on celebrities. So they had a philosophy where they had celebrities across 3 things, which is cricket, music, and Bollywood. And they would take the mid-tier celebrities. So these would be like cricket team at that point would be people like Rishabh Pant. In music, it will be people like Guru Randhawa, right? So people which are more cheaper, and they would have a larger number of them, right? So 6 people from the cricket team, 6 from the etc. So this is what we call like a lower cost macro strategy. The other is where you sort of index on one celebrity as your face of brand, right? So this is, for example, like Shilpa Shetty, or there are certain of our brands which are doing, let's say, with Anushka Sharma and things like that. The second thing to consider is that, do you want to do a equity model with them, right? Or do you want to do a cash, a normal endorsement fee model with them? And the third is also make sure that your celebrity value should match what the company is talking about, right? So, for example, a lot of companies, end up taking random celebrities because they are cheap, right? So, like one maybe I shouldn't name it, but one company took some West Indian player, right, Darren Sammy or something, because they felt he was the cheapest, right? So that does not work. You have to have, I mean, the celebrity has to stand up for something which your also brand stands up for, and it has to be something different, right? So today, if you stand for natural, that's not very useful, because any celebrity will say, that they're natural. But for example, let's say Virat Kohli stands for, vegan, right? Or, very sort of non-meat thing. So if you have something which is in that, that's a perfect fit, right? So, for example, if you have a baby product, right, and there's some celebrities a new mother, that will work very well. So just think about that. For a lot of brands, the important factor which affects COGS is sales. Do we plan as per COGS on some level of scale that is price sensitive? So that is completely true. So for you, GM improvement should be a all-time task, right? So whatever you are at today, you should continuously think that how you improve. Part of it will come from scale, which anyways is fine, but part of it should also come from, just process improvement. Can you replace certain ingredients, etc. But this is a very sort of this is one of the first questions we ask, that how will you improve your gross margin over the next 2 to 3 years, right? Is ROAS total revenue divided by total ad spend, or revenue? This is the revenue brought by ads divided by total brand spend, not the total revenue by total spend, because then your repeats would sort of eat into your ROAS. Is brand marketing really essential? Because every other brand is doing that, and anyway it hits EBITDA. So isn't performance marketing enough for scalability as product speaks for itself? This is a very interesting question. See, brand marketing is very, very important, because performance marketing is nothing. You are boosting the stock of Facebook and Google, right? That's what you are doing essentially. You will have customer loyalty when a customer comes and buys you, right? So Nike is Nike because when I want to buy shorts, I think of Nike and I go and buy, not because I'm on Facebook and I find an ad from Nike and I buy, right? So your long-term sustainability will only be built through brand marketing. Performance is just to ensure. If you can work out a model where you acquire through performance marketing, and that person becomes a person, your customer for life for the next 15, 20 years, then that model will work. But we have never seen that work, right? So that's why, performance is, think of it, performance is you are renting a customer from somebody. How do you then sort of make them your own customer? How do you value promoters' investment in terms of salary withdrawn, capital investment, etc.? So, see, essentially, we sort of don't value. So let's say a promoter puts in 2 crores, right, in the business. And with that, he has reached 50 lakhs a month, right? So the business will be valued on 50 lakhs a month, irrespective of whatever the promoter have put in. The promoter could have put in 2 crores, the promoter could have put in 10 crores. So there is no per se sort of value for that investment. Because, if it is 60, let's say it's doing 50 lakhs, you are on a 6 crore ARR, you get a 4x multiple. So then you're already valuing the company at 24 crores. So that 2 crores has helped you reach 24 crores, right? In terms of salary withdrawn, there are many ranges. Generally at the start, it will be quite low, right? But, as you raise the next round of capital, it will increase. Maybe the next after that, you are at market level, etc. So that, but this varies quite a bit. There's no standard sort of in the market. If manufacturing in-house, do you look at salaries as a part of COGS inventory or as overheads? So we look at it as a part of COGS. And again, this is as your utilization goes up at the inventory level, your COGS will go down. So you get that benefit in GM scale, right? But any cost which is related to production, including salaries, inward logistics, etc., all of it goes into COGS. For a small beauty brand that cannot afford celebrity endorsements, what kind of influencer mix do you recommend? I would say do all the nano influencers at least, all the micro ones where you can, for exchange for the product, if they have, let's say, some even 500 to 1,000 followers, they can sort of do that. On the celebrity, like if it is a very sort of purpose driven brand or it is a very different proposition, see if you can do a sort of a equity tie up with with a celebrity. So for example, like there's a brand called Pico, which is into home care. They have stood for sorry, can you just give me 1 minute? I have a small daughter. Okay, so so maybe you can do a equity for so I was talking about Beko. So Beko it stands for this natural home care, and Dia Mirza as a is there a celebrity endorser. Now she also was very heavily into that ecosystem, so she was talking about completely chemical free, etc. And then she was very happy to come on the cap table as an investor. So she said that I know you cannot afford me, but and she obviously there are two models where the celebrity is very convinced, they put in money for equity. The other model is where you basically this just provide you the endorsement and then they get equity in lieu of it. So I think if you can try something like that if you want, but the standard what 80-90% of the brands is you work with nano influencers till you hit a certain scale.
Also, just to jump in, Beko is a cohort 1 company, Anshul. So I think even more, yeah.
Nice. So then maybe in one of the sessions you can.
Session. I mean, we are planning around with more in the cohort. Someone also from celebrity endorsement, someone from Nagin sauce. If you notice, Amitabh Bachchan, became a brand ambassador for Nagin. So yeah.
Nice.
Yeah. Great.
By the way, I love Nagin sauce. I just had it in the afternoon.
Still that version.
Great. Then parameter or multiple into factor for brand valuation with below situation in place strategic. Sorry, I did not get this multiple. What affects the multiple for brand valuation? Is it?
Yeah. So should I intervene here rather than typing, if you don't mind?
Yeah, sure.
Okay, perfect. So there could be different ways of investment. One investment approach could be raising a funds through a Series A, Series B. The another approach could be a straight away having a strategic partnership wherein they demand minimum 26% or maybe a 51%. Could be the one approach. And one approach would be towards having a majority and over a period of time, it would be acquisition. So would like to have a clarity on that front in terms of what would be a multiple X factors in a different position. I know it's a specific to a category and different things do have a different parameters.
So I think Sagar, maybe there'll be a session I think on that the final.
Yeah, as I started the Shark Tank, we will be having it literally to evaluate which source of capital is right for you and when between an RBF or aggregator acquisition or a venture capital. So I think that will specifically answer that.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
I can just quickly tell you within 2 minutes my take that it varies a lot, right? So, but good brands, we generally stay away from strategic partnerships because the only reason for a strategic to come in will mostly be to acquire, right? So at that point, you sort of have your destiny set. Sometimes, companies have come in for as financial investors. So like some of our brands like HUL, etc. have invested. But we go to extreme lengths to ensure that it is a completely financial sort of investment. Because after that, what happens is then the financial investors are also hesitant to invest, right? Because they say that, because any financial investor after that needs an exit at some point. And if you, for example, HUL is sitting on your cap table, then your exit options become very minimal, right? So I think strategic partnership slash acquisition majority is when you sort of are clear that you want to go down that path. It's not sort of the independent path. Right?
Understood. Thank you. Thank you.
Okay, perfect, Anshul. I think any final questions? Because though we have exactly 12 minutes, I'm not sure we can do the activity anymore. But we have 5. We can take 1-2 more questions before we conclude. Anyone? Or maybe Anshul, do you want to also spend time to summarize the learning? Because I think we have one side covered from a summary perspective. If you want to give advice to the cohort, that would be also very valuable.
Sir, I had a question.
Okay,
Which
Drishti,
I think
turn on your video
yeah.
first.
Okay, just give me a second.
Don't worry, we will not judge you. We just want to.
No, I did not have the light
Okay, perfect.
on. Yeah. No, I had a question, which I put here, which was that, if you're trying to build a category creator, right? Like you said, the ROI, the burn might be higher. Just wanted to though understand what are those certain levers that you need across different channels as a brand that you should definitely focus on, because for instance, for probably a personal care or skincare brand, maybe because there is so much noise already happening, sometimes the ROI itself is better. But when you're starting out, people don't know, they don't even know if you should focus on that category, if it is something that is relevant to me. So just wanted to understand, how do you do things differently there? Because everybody is sort of taking the same approach in a different category.
Rishti, I think the one of the big hacks which can be there is that can you help the retailers help you build that category, right? Because for them also it results in more business, and they have much more power to give you visibility, etc. So, like for example, when boat started, although it's not a category, but Amazon wanted to build that category for themselves, and they gave them a lot of visibility, right? So
Got it.
so that is one way. The second is that you will have to spend, right? And as you spend, you basically figure out that what kind of economics is working out, right? So, for example, let's say if you are selling something for 600 and your acquisition is 800, 900. So maybe, over a period of time with repeats, you can make it work, right? And hence might make sense to keep investing. But if, for example, you suddenly find that it is going crazy 2000, 2500, then you have to completely sort of get off digital and find another way of building that, community. Yeah. And second is a lot of community, development. So, offline find communities where people have sort of, how do you call it, relevance to it, right? And then go and, keep doing that. I think, another, sort of suggestion would be make sure that you survive that thing, right? So what happens is, a lot of, for example, if you take the fitness market, a lot of apps which you see today, Healthify,
Yeah.
Meals, etc., they started in 2008-9, right? And at that point, there was absolutely zero awareness about health tracking, calorie tracking, why should somebody do it, etc., right? And 6-7 years they spent in the wilderness, right? The way they survived that was that at that point they found certain small communities which were very sort of were fanatics about it. So there were people who wanted to track everything, niche athletics groups which wanted to track, etc., right? So they kept focusing on them till it became a mass phenomenon, right? So you'll have to do
Got
this.
it.
Yeah.
But then, as an investor, does it really make so? For instance, like you gave an example where probably your AOV is 600, but your CAC is 800, which at a CMP level will never be positive. So, at that point, is it a hindrance for an investor to sort of come in, or is it something that they understand because it's more like a category creation play?
No, it's a hindrance because see, they have to believe in the category for it to
Yeah.
go, right? So if someone is very has belief in it, then it is okay. But generally, you will find that people will be skeptical, right? And for, I mean, good reason and bad reason. Many new categories don't get created, many get created, right? So that is why category creations generally fundraising is tougher compared to.
Got it. Got it. Thank you.
once we start, what is the brand evaluation percentage trend in market for a like it is 1, 2, 3x of GMV? Are you talking about valuation? So I mean,
Yes.
valuation is very subjective. It can be anywhere from, I would say, 2x to 7x of revenue, kind of a thing. Depends on a lot of factors. Depends on your repeat rates. Depend on how differentiated the product is. Is there IP or no IP? How strong the brand is, how quickly the brand is growing. Team, right? So there are a number of factors which go into it. But broadly, anywhere from 2x to 7x, kind of. How large the TAM is. So is it a niche product or is it a very large, TAM, etc. Once we start large scale brand marketing, how soon should we expect to see an impact on D2C traffic, accelerated acquisition? So almost immediately. So if, for example, you start TV, you will quickly see that your D2C, DTC traffic will increase. In fact, a very interesting sort of statistic from Boat is that, Boat's D2C business was never profitable. But once Aman started coming on Shark Tank, it suddenly became profitable. So you will see a lot of you will see a fair amount of increase there, and in fact that is a metric which you should track as efficiency of your marketing spend. That is it becoming better? Ideal team structure which you feel an investable company should have. So it depends on stage. Right at the start, it's generally the founder and just one or two people with them. I think see, technically what we would like is to have one product person and one marketing person, right? And the product person, and these two could be founders, right? Or this could be team members, right? But at least these two people should be there. Now within that, now you start building the team depending on how you are expanding. So for example, if Amazon is one big channel, do you have one person who is handling Amazon for you, right? Then as you start layering brand marketing on top of it, do you have brand marketing? Or you mean at the product market winning at POS stage? So at that point, it's a very minimal team, hardly 7 to 8 people. I think maybe probably 2 or 3 people in ops, 2 people in marketing, and generally the founder is working with some external help for product development. That's the usual case. I think logistics is completely outsourced. So most companies have outsourced this to WhereIQ or one of those guys. So operationally, you just need 1 or 2 people to do it. Marketing, some people start with in-house, creatives, etc. But generally, what we have found is, better to start with the agency and then bring it in-house over time. So there also, it's very minimal, 1 or 2 people. And then after that, you obviously have the product development, which is the important one, which is generally founder doing outsourced. And so I would say 6 to 7 people with marketing, product, and maybe 1 or 2 in operations. Okay. Yeah.
Hey, Anshul, last question. You want to take a last question, okay? We have Ishan raising his hand. You want to take that, Anshul?
Yeah, sure.
Yes, Ishan. Yes.
Hi, Anshul. So, in the P&Ls that you showed, I think one of the key things in them was repeat rates were a very important thing in all the 3 sectors that you shared for. My question is, if the case is reverse, where, maybe the repeat purchase cycle is longer for the customer, but your AOVs may be higher for something like a Wakefit or a furniture company. What is the metric there you would use to judge the business health in that sense?
So there, Ishan, we would want to break even on the first sale, right? So and the benefit in these is that the AOVs are very high, right? So like if you take Wakefit or a mattress company, the AOV would be, let's say, or I can talk about, like, we have a portfolio company, the sleep company. So there the AOV is around 20K, and because of that, you can spend quite a bit on performance marketing, right? So I mean, you can have CACs going up to 4,000, 5,000. So what we would want is two things. One is breaking even on the first sale, and second, some sort of potential to see that can you upsell in the same sale itself, right? So let's say today you are selling only mattresses, but tomorrow can you add a comforter to it? Can you add a bed sheet to it, right? And pillows to it, etc. So just those two.
Right. All right. Thanks.
Perfect, Anshul. I want to now take another 2 minutes we have left to sort of thank you for doing this. I just want to summarize a lot of the learnings that you've shared in this session very generously. Two things I want to reiterate what my discussion I had with Anshul before is, we as founders, we got to treat our business as our babies, right? And as investors, it's really hard for them to tell us directly why they're saying no, right? And then instead of a one-to-one basis, we had this idea where why couldn't we do it as a learning session, right? And why couldn't we share the lens for which we are evaluating businesses for all of us to sort of objectively evaluate our own business, right? So I would recommend go back to the slides, understand how you're positioning yourself, how you're differentiating against the competition, understand where your metrics are against your P&L versus what a target P&L should look like. Because even if it's our baby, we need to be objective in our evaluation. And on that note, thank you, Anshul, for sharing your insights to build a successful D2C healthy business. It's not just about raising venture capital, it's about building successful businesses. That's why Anshul even chose to raise the title as building a successful D2C business. It might be venture capital, might be your route, it might be revenue-based financing, or it might be bootstrapping, right? And that's also, to be honest, a nice plug for us to put it on to the Shark Tank, which is coming this Saturday. Few of our cohort companies will be coming in, and different investors showing their perspectives. So I hope those who are attending the Shark Tank got a chance or get insights to sort of take away from the session to build it out in their decks. And on that note, Anshul, we have a way of saying thanks. It's very simple. You can join us. You've not sort of experienced that. I don't know. Everyone turns on their cameras, they unmute themselves, and I play a little background music, which you might have heard in the waiting area. And you can join us. We just put our hand in front, and then we do a countdown between 3 to 1, and then we end with voting. Okay? Yeah. Perfect. So we have hands in front. The cameras open. 3, 2, 1. Go team, everyone. Thank you so much, Anshul.
Thank
Very
you.
nice.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Anshul.
Thanks, everyone. Bye.
Bye, everyone.
Thank you, Anshul.